Hi guys, this video was filmed in February before COVID-19 was a pandemic. Please know that we are not currently traveling and are self-isolating. Now on to the video. To Death Valley National Park and are headed out to do some exploring.
So our first hike in Death Valley is to Desolation Canyon.
Yeah, it's a 3.6 mile out and back hike. It's considered a moderate hike with about 600 feet of elevation gain, so we're just getting into it now.
This feels like one of those old westerns where the cowboy is dying of thirst and the vultures are following behind him.
Oh Lord, no reprieve from the sun and the heat for sure. I'm hoping we get into this canyon soon and get some shade. We got our shade, thank goodness. This is a fairly narrow canyon, so once you get into it, I mean, unless you go at high noon and the sun is just straight overhead, you're gonna be in shade in this canyon.
So the canyon we're in is formed by flowing water coming through it. And what you see behind us here is actually an 8-foot waterfall when the water is running.
But you get to hike or climb up that waterfall to get up the trail. So there are actually 2 dry waterfalls on this hike. This is our first one, and we'll have another one just a little further on. Well, according to the National Park paper on this hike, the green-blue color in the rock behind me is from chlorite and nantronite. I hope I pronounced that right. Most of the canyon is that red-orange color, which comes from hematite, and occasionally you'll get yellow, which is limonite. Well, we made it to the top of Desolation Canyon Trail, and you get a really nice overlook of Death Valley below. We did climb 600 feet to get here, so we're at a somewhat high vantage point.
It came from 0, so...
Actually, I think we might have been below 0. When we went to the visitor center and asked the ranger, this was her favorite hike in the park, so that's why we started here.
It was a great hike, and right now we have a pretty cool view of the Artist Drive.
It's a paved scenic drive in the park that brings you through the same area that this hike went through.
Yeah, pretty neat.
Yeah.
All right, our next stop is Badwater Basin.
Yes, it's the lowest point in North America at 282 feet below sea level. It's a big salt flat, and you can either park and just look over it, or you can actually walk out onto it.
Yeah.
So if you come to Badwater Basin, I highly recommend taking the trek out to
The salt flats.
right at the section. If I had to guess, it's maybe about a mile walk out, and it's really cool out here.
Really cool.
Yeah, well worth it. All right, we are out exploring again today, having a little lunch before we hit the trails. So Death Valley National Park is the largest national park outside of Alaska. It's a very big park. So we are camped in the Furnace Wells section of the park, and yesterday we went south to do like Desolation Canyon, Badwater Basin, and the Salt Flats. Today we came north up to the Stovepipe Wells part of the park. We're going to do Mosaic Canyon, and there's also some sand dunes around here.
Yep. Make sure you bring a nice brimmed hat. That sun is beating down for sure.
It is.
And be prepared for a bumpy ride, because the roads in here are terrible.
The road to get out to Mosaic Canyon is 2.5 miles of unpaved gravel road. It is passable by sedans. You don't need like a high clearance 4-wheel drive vehicle, but it is a bumpy ride getting out here. Has been washed slick. It does not give you much traction to get up. We are in Mosaic Canyon. This canyon is formed by water, as I'm sure probably all canyons are. So during particularly heavy rainfall, the water will come down off the mountains and create a flash flood inside this canyon. The more severe the storm, the more of the gravel and the boulders the water picks up and moves down the canyon. And during a really severe storm, it will actually fill the canyon up with gravel. And then during the less severe storms, the water will move that gravel back out and kind of clear the canyon back out.
This area where we're at right now is one of those spots where all the boulders get kind of trapped in here, so it's
right.
Kind of makes a very Star Wars-esque landscape.
Yeah, it's on the map described as a boulder jam, and you have to kind of work your way through it to continue forward on the trail.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an adventure. bit windy today. Crazy storm blowing in. Wow. What do you think?
Windy.
Well, the weather here the past couple of days has been nuts. We had a crazy windstorm that turned into a dust storm. And I don't know if you can see it behind me, but there's a mountain range in the background there that was completely obscured by dust. It was actually pretty incredible to see, but it kept us from doing a lot of things, unfortunately. So today is our last day in Death Valley National Park, and we're gonna try to make the most of it.
We're headed out for our next day of fun here in Death Valley, and we brought the dogs with us today, so that's going to limit us some on the amount of things we can do, because like all national parks, they're not allowed in most places.
Right, yeah, they're not allowed on hiking trails. The general rule of thumb is paws on pavement. So we're going to be doing some lookout points today and some scenic drives and just seeing more of the park.
All of which are highly rated things to do in the park anyways.
Exactly. Not everything has to be done by hiking into it, although that is a great way to see the park. Not everybody is able to do that, and there are still amazing things to see without having to hike. We're on our first scenic drive, which is the Mule Canyon Drive. That was Mule Canyon Drive.
That was a fun little drive.
Yeah, it was. We don't have a lot of information on it, unfortunately, because it's not in the newspaper that the park gives you. If I had to guess, would you say it was maybe a 5-mile drive?
Something like that.
It wasn't too terribly long.
No, not at all.
It is a gravel road, but totally passable by like normal cars. You don't need...
There was a car behind us, just a regular sedan. No
Right.
big deals.
Right. But it was a fun drive. It was kind of twisty and turny and kind of climbed up some of those dirt mounds. So yeah, it was fun.
We have climbed here to the top of Dante's Peak.
Yes, we are standing at the highest point in the park here, over 5,000 feet in elevation. And it's kind of amazing standing up here, the view you get looking down over the valley. You can actually see Badwater Basin at, what was it, negative 282 feet?
Right.
And the salt flats down there, and you can see the people walking out on the salt flats, and they are like smaller than ants.
Gives you a great view of just the whole valley and in general. Really cool to see from up here where we've already been.
the road getting up to Dante's View is just the last maybe half mile of it is really steep, like 15% grade and really windy. Not recommended for anything over 25 feet. So just know if you're visiting Death Valley and anything very large that you will have that restriction.
We heard that 15% grade from a couple of people that rode their road bikes, pedal bikes,
right
to the top.
Well, road is a loose term because when we passed them, they were walking.
Yes. So we've come down to Zabriskie Point and dropped about 4,500 feet in elevation, and it is considerably warmer here.
Yes.
Up on the top of Dante's Peak, we had to wear our jackets and stuff. We've come down here and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to take my t-shirt off.
It is amazing what 4,000 feet of elevation will do for the temperatures. You know, we always talk about how national parks are unique. They all have something special that sets them apart. We haven't really talked much about Death Valley yet, but it has a lot that is unique.
Yeah, there's a lot of extremes in this park.
It is the lowest point in North America. The Badwater Basin is anyways at 282 feet below sea level. It's also one of the hottest areas in the world.
Highest recorded temperature of 134 degrees.
In the shade, yeah. It was
the
over
shade.
100 years ago, back in 1913, but still, I just can't even fathom that kind of heat. It's also one of the driest areas in the world. They average about 2 inches of rain a year. And it's also the biggest national park in the lower 48.
Yep.
So yeah, a lot of extremes here. Definitely a unique national park. I don't know why this is a paved trail, but dogs are not allowed on it. So TJ and I are gonna have to take turns going up and checking out Zabriskie Point. This is the view from Zabriskie Point. And finally, we got some information on the 20 Mule teams. There's some informational signs up here that explain the mining history in Death Valley. In the late 1800s, they discovered borax. And for about 6 years, they actually would haul the borax out of Death Valley using 20 mule teams. There were actually 20 mules pulling 2 carriages, for lack of a better word, full of borax out of Death Valley. Christian Zabriskie was he was actually the vice president and general manager of one of the borax companies that had holdings in Death Valley. And they ended up, in an effort to preserve, when mining kind of slowed down, in an effort to preserve Death Valley, they actually fought to get it to become a national monument in 1933 and then eventually a national park in 1994. Point done. I was disappointed that it wasn't dog friendly because it was paved, and I'm not sure why that is, but I'm so glad that we did it because we finally got some of that mining history and 20 mule team explanation that we had been missing up until this point. So it was definitely well worth it. It was beautiful up there and we learned quite a bit. So next stop,
Artist Drive. Just pulled on to the Artist Drive.
yes, It is a 9-mile paved, one-way scenic drive through the colorful hills of Death Valley. What is this?
It's called the Artist's Palette. So here you can see all the different layers or types of rocks and minerals here that give the mountains their difference in colors.
Yeah, and this is part of what we saw on that Desolation Canyon hike the other day.
That's right, which I think we just passed on the road here.
Yep, and we gave our science lesson on the various forms of rocks that create those different colors. All right, we put the dogs back in the trailer and fed them dinner, and we're ending our day with a visit to the inn at Death Valley.
This is one of 2 lodges here in Death Valley that you can stay at. There's also the ranch of Death Valley right across the street from the campground.
Yeah, in Furnace Creek. I think there might be lodging actually at
Stovepipe Wells. There might be something up there too. I think there's a small lodge also.
Yeah, but this is definitely the fanciest of them all. It's this really beautiful, I think it's from the 1920s.
If I remember right, it was built in 1924.
Yeah, and it's just really beautiful. It looks pretty hoity-toity, so we're gonna stand out in there like a sore thumb.
It definitely looks like an oasis out here in the middle of all this desert.
Yeah, it's got a million palm trees and bougainvillea and flowers, and it's really gorgeous.
Green grass.
Looking forward to it. Having a Hotel California moment here.
We are currently lost in the oasis.
It's weird, when you came out of that tunnel, you were just like on one of the floors in the bedrooms, and we walked up 4 flights of stairs and never found the lobby. This place is incredible.
This place is above our pay grade.
It's heavenly here. It is legit a fake oasis in the desert, but it's so nice.
All right, this is our last night at Death Valley. We're heading out tomorrow, so we thought we would end it here and say goodbye to you guys tonight.
So when we first got to Death Valley, and let me preface this by saying, we've been in the desert now for 3 months. It's now the beginning of March, and we've been in Arizona, Southern California, and Nevada since December. So we're definitely like at our limit for the desert. So when we came here, it was sort of like, oh great, more of the desert. But Death Valley is amazing, and we did enjoy our time here. It did grow on us. When we first came in, TJ said it looks kind of like a rock quarry.
when you're coming down the hill from
wherever you're coming from, right?
It is. It looked like a quarry.
It totally looked like a quarry. You know, it's the desert, but like literally nothing grows here. There are no cactus, no cool saguaro or Oregon pipe like you get in some of the other national parks.
But the further you get into it, you start to see the real beauty of this place, and it pulls you in. It really does.
And the variety of things to do. You know, we were talking about the extremes earlier, from the lowest point to the hottest and the driest. There's a lot to see here. You've got the salt flats and the sand dunes and the crater and the slot canyons. And so, you know, in the end, even though maybe our first impression of it was kind of like, meh, it definitely grew on us, and it's definitely a worthwhile stop. We've definitely enjoyed our time here. Yeah, so hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, please be sure to give us a thumbs up.
And if you want to keep following along, make sure you subscribe.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.